Hi everyone, I'm Josh Uvor, Chief Information Security Officer at Tessian. Today we're here to talk about latest research out of Tessian, specifically sharing everything that we've learned from analyzing over 2 million malicious emails that made it through secure email gateways. And to help us explore what successful phishing attacks look like today and how we can better protect ourselves in conjunction with our research findings, I'm delighted to welcome James McQuiggan, Security Awareness Advocate at KnowBe4, and Jason Lang, Targeted Operations Team Lead at TrustedSec. James, Jason, it's great to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for making the time. I'd like to kick off by diving right in into our first question. And James, this is going to come to you. So we've seen millions of malicious emails that are getting past secure email gateways. What's going wrong? What's your take on what we're observing there?
So certainly my take when it comes to the secure email gateways and all those emails that are getting through, we know that, 85 to 90% of the email that's coming in that is considered spam or phishing type or malicious in nature is getting stopped at the gateway essentially. But to my understanding, the cyber criminals are out there buying the same hardware that we're all using, those secure email gateways, the same products, firewalls, and they're testing their phishing emails and their emails against it because it's relying on filters and keywords. And they're testing those emails against the same technology and seeing what gets through and what doesn't and adjusting as need be. So they're looking for the weaknesses essentially in the filtering to determine what they can use, and then they kind of build up their own little repertoire and their emails that they've got, and then those are the ones that end up firing through that we end up getting through to the individuals' inboxes.
Yeah, definitely. And from my standpoint, so much of it comes down to the configuration of the product as well. I mean, if you buy a product and you put it in, into your corporate environment, and then you cut it off at the knees because you're getting like false positives or false negatives or things like that, attackers understand that. And so, we're able to work within those confines. And to James's point, yes, absolutely. We, whenever we can get our hands on a product and test it and poke around it and see what works and what doesn't, yes, 100% we will do that. But, there's definitely an element of craft that goes into it. But like so many security controls, if you're essentially kind of neutering the product, just to get into production, well, it's not going to do what you want it to do.
Yeah, thank you both. And I think that, from my perspective, one of the things that stands out as well, based off of what each of you shared, is that, the traditional approach of filtering based off of specific indicators and rules that lends itself to confidence in detection of those indicators, perhaps, but it also creates a testable situation for adversaries, right? And so if we're thinking about traditional approaches that are more rules-based and similar as applied in secure email gateways, and Jason, I'll go to you first for this one. If secure email gateways and traditional application of rule sets, as we just discussed, are letting us down in some regards, and employees are becoming more of our last line of defense, how do we get to a point where we can rely on people, and can we rely on people to detect more or even close to all attacks?
Well, the answer is no. No, you can't rely on people. That's why we have defense in depth. And when I say rely on people, I have to be careful with that because people are going to do what they're trained to do. If you have someone that has no training and an email comes in and they're not sure how to handle it, they're going to default to an instinct. And so that's why, good security awareness training, and this is, I have a huge beef with the industry on this when it comes to actual, good security awareness training. But good security awareness training is so important. If a user doesn't know what to identify and they've never actually seen the consequence of a phishing attack, well, they're going to have no idea what to do. And quite honestly, I don't blame them. So, like I said, to James's point, as far as, percentage of things being blocked, that's fantastic. It's great to hear that all that stuff is getting blocked. But at the end of the day, a crafty attacker is going to get something in the door, and the user is going to have that moment where they have to decide what are they going to do, and they're going to fall back to their training in that moment.
Yeah, exactly. And to echo what Jason was saying, the training is a key part of it. And a lot of the times people can go through that training, but then just not care about it. We're a prime example. We're all in our cars every day driving down the road, and we see the speed limit says, 100 kilometers an hour or 60 miles an hour, but we're still doing 70 or 120. We're aware, but we don't care. And a lot of the time, people are missing the reason why. And they're missing that understand that why they have to make sure that they check their links and make sure they're, when a strange email comes in that gets past the gateway, that they're taking the moment to look at that and get that understanding of what that email is asking them to do, and whether it's a phishing email or not. But having that awareness, having that understanding, and it's not just your training that you do it once a year and hope that folks aren't clicking on links. It has to be a continual process, and eventually work towards having a security culture within your organization versus just having that awareness and training.
Yeah, and I think those are great examples, James. And Jason, I 100% agree that, especially when you look back on the previous practices and practices to date for security awareness training, we're really falling short of the mark in many implementations and approaches. And, James, to your point, I think taking into account the realities of human behavior, both in products and technology, but also critically in how we actually train our employees and empower them to make the right decisions at the right time. Those examples that you shared are perfect jumping off points actually for this next question. James, I'll start with you for this one. Kind of getting a little bit more technical in terms of these experiences. We know that attacks aren't always predictable in what they seem on the surface. Oftentimes, these training programs and our traditional approaches are very transactional with one point of contact, specifically an email that has a malicious attachment, a email that has a malicious link in it. But our research found that 76% of malicious emails don't start with things like an attachment. And additional research found that a lot of these attacks start with a otherwise seemingly benign with no attachment and no phishing link included. So how is security training today, or a future vision that you have, accounting for zero payload attacks? And what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so a lot of people, or most training programs are going to have the examples where you've got an email that's got a link in it, or it's a fresh email and it's in the English in it or the language in it isn't written well, and that's kind of the key sign. And we've evolved way past that. Cyber criminals are using people from those countries to get them to be written so that it's properly understood. They're not they don't have, sometimes they even have the links. And a lot of the times that we see with business email compromise, there's been a lot this year with regards to gift card scams, and those emails will start off with, "Hi, are you in the office today?" And it's going to be coming from somebody in authority within the organization. And as human nature, we're geared so that we respond to somebody that's a manager or CEO, somebody of that authority, and we go, "Yeah, no, I'm here today. Is everything okay? What's up?" And human nature, we want to support or help out, because when the boss is asking for help, we want to answer. And so a lot of folks, are kind of driven towards responding to that, rather than, if they do respond, let's see what this is about. And then the cyber criminal is going to build up that social engineering con game with the victim to build a quick rapport. They may mention something about, something in the office or something that's happening within the organization that's publicly known, but again, working to build that rapport. And then eventually hit them with the request of, "I need you to go buy these gift cards," or, "Hey, check out the new pictures taken on my new camera," or, "I've been on vacation, have a look at these images." And a lot of the time people feel that this is who it is, and have that trust, and unfortunately end up clicking on the link or then going forward with the attachment and the actual attack. So the criminals are evolving and mixing up their game different than what they're seeing or what's being given to folks with regards to the security awareness and training.
Yeah, I can only echo all that stuff. I like I said earlier, I got some big beefs with security awareness training, as is done in large part to how corporations do it with like the computer-based training model. Users sit there for a half hour. They know how to click next, finish. Take the quote unquote exam at the end, and then they're done for a year, and they don't care. And quite honestly, I wouldn't care either. And that kind of stuff is really frustrating to me. And so, from my standpoint, your question was, does security awareness training account for zero payload attacks? Well, it accounts for it in the loosest possible way by saying, here's a demonstration of what an actual email looks like that might be naughty. Well, yeah, that's great, but the user has no idea what happens after that. When I give security awareness training, there's always a demo involved. You're like, okay, you click the link. This is what command and control looks like. This is what it looks like for me to download your passwords.txt file. I mean, that kind of stuff has to happen in computer awareness training or in security awareness training. Otherwise, users are like, this is dumb. I have a gazillion meetings and I don't care, and they just next through the exam and it's over. So, no, the direct answer to your question is no. It's not accounting for it in any meaningful sense.
Yeah, and I think your point about folks having the reality of needing to get work done, right, and being exposed to those traditional platforms where it's click, 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 next, all the way through. One of my favorite stories from this front was a unintended ironic outcome of the attempted application of security awareness training at an organization that I shall not name for good purposes. But the implementation of security awareness training actually led to unintentionally and like not part of the designed outcomes for application security training, because we found that there were motivated engineers in the organization that reverse engineered the actual client-side code in the browser to figure out how to build a repeatable test program that actually automatically brought them through all the completion stages of that training. And it was a really interesting outcome because they actually learned a tremendous amount about application security, but that was not the goal of that training. So, Jurassic Park was life finds a way. I don't know how that correlates here, but engineers will find a way, perhaps. So, actually, let's, Jason, let's come back to you then. So this is more of, a future-looking, innovative theme here. So imagine that you have a magic wand that makes engineering and product priorities a thing and budgets a thing, and you don't have to worry about those. So at Tessian, we focus our phishing solution on approaches that are able to actually leverage observations of human behavior to detect things that other rules-based systems miss, things like third-party account takeover and the zero payload attacks that we just talked about. And what we really try to do is focus on giving in-the-moment coaching and educational context to users to make a good decision. What are other innovations or technologies that come to mind in terms of how we can be more effective at protecting users and coaching them in these moments? So you have the wand, you have the budget. What would you do with it?
Yeah, so much of it is tactical. In other words, the user is, when users are being trained or things like that, they're focused on the email themselves, on the email itself. What do I do in this specific moment? And all that definitely has a place. One thing that I don't see a lot of is correlation. So, for example, when I send a spear phishing attack, I might send it to 5 users. All right, long gone are the days when, as a determined intruder, I'm not doing drive-bys where I'm sending, a million emails, spamming the internet. I'm not doing that. All my attacks are spear phish based. So I'm going after very small select users or group of users that I've researched. If you send an email to 5 users, and let's say that they all land in the inbox, 1 user clicks, you get command and control. 3 users ignore it. 1 user, is diligent and says this email's naughty and hits the plug-in button that says report this. And so what happens? Well, if the security team is doing their job, they're going to track down everywhere that email went and actually do analysis on the user's machines, all of them. Otherwise, what I normally see is some security dude burnt out, tired, at the end of a long day. He's like, all right, I'm going to block this domain, blocks the domain, and then goes home and then thinks, all right, we're safe. And that's a problem. And in my opinion, innovation is pretty straightforward when it comes to just doing the basics. So when a phishing email comes in, you block the domain, that's great. But, as an attacker, my C2 domain is different than my sending domain. My payload domain is different than my C2 domain. So what have you actually blocked? Chances are just the SMTP domain. So it's like you have to actually dig in and do some analysis on that stuff. And you can't just, block the sending domain and then go home feeling good about yourself, because that's not sufficient. So I think innovation needs to start much more simple rather than going all, next gen futuristic. Just get, your security staff to do diligence on the email, actually pull apart the email, track down the users, and go through the basics.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback on what Jason was saying, you almost want a feature, and it's going to be a shameless plug. Sorry, folks. Within KnowBe4, the ability to rip the emails, those phishing emails that get identified. So if you have a couple of people reporting a particular phish email coming in, there is the having the capability of then removing that phishing email if in anybody else's mailbox, and having it automatically removed out of there to help protect the organization, so somebody inadvertently doesn't click on it, that doesn't see the warning signs with that. And then even then taking out that email and then possibly turning it around, removing all the dangerous links, and then sending it back out as a kind of a phishing assessment to everybody. But outside of the KnowBe4 products that we have, I think also the ability to sandbox any of the links as well. If you can, when a user clicks on the link, that it gets checked, either through AI or machine language, allowing technology to work with the people in the processes to kind of to check that email and check that link and make sure that it's not going anywhere naughty, as Jason likes to refer to. Which I'm going to start stealing now. I like naughty.
That's fun.
That's great. And so this will be our last question, and James, we'll start with you. Let's fast forward a year from now. We're having this conversation again and looking back on another year, the 2022 data set of phishing research and observations that we've made, and hopefully we're doing the same type of reporting. What are your predictions? If I can just get like a 60-second version of this. What do you think your predictions are in terms of what will be the same, what might be different, and really what does the future of phishing look like over the next year?
I don't think it's getting any better. I think we're still kind of on that same, we're still talking about phishing. I've been talking about phishing for 10 years, trying to get organizations. Now, do I feel like I'm failing? No, because there's always new people coming into the environment. There's new people into different positions, moving around, and we're always having to keep talking about phishing. Over the last year, because of the pandemic and people working from home, we saw that significant double in size of phishing emails, websites that got created for phishing purposes. I think as organizations start going back to the office, people may be a bit relaxed. October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and that's where we ramp up, and everyone's talking about phishing. And essentially, come November, people are heightened. December comes along, everyone takes holiday. They come back in January, and we're back to square one. So I don't see it getting any better anytime soon until there's a significant shift within society, the norms of people that are working to prevent, being attacked by phishing emails.
Yeah, from my standpoint, I think phishing is always going to be a thing, but going forward in the future, I think as social media becomes more and more prevalent and much more of a fixture in people's lives, why on earth would I bother sending an email when I could just pull you up on LinkedIn, send you a message that has a Dropbox link? I mean, why would I even bother, trying to go through the email gateway and going through all that stuff when there's just so many ways of contacting someone and sending them a link that has nothing to do with email security? So, rule number one of hacking: hackers are lazy. I'm going to take the laziest possible approach, and if people understand that, it's like, oh well, okay, if I can pull you up over here and not bother with the email gateway, that's what I'm going to do. And so just stick with that rule and tailor your solutions appropriately. Understand hackers are going to go for the easiest possible way that's not going to get them detected. And so many think that that's like super, like really sexy evasions that are going near macro, and there is some of that, but at the end of the day, if I can just skip email entirely, I will. I'll call them. I would so much rather call a user than email. So it works every time. I love it.
That's great, and I think one of the things that we often forget on on the blue side, on the defender side, is we always think that we're the ones that are constrained by budgets, by the rules of economics, right? But we have to remember that attackers are constrained similarly as well. And while the realities are a little bit different, ultimately, I think about that implementation of laziness, right? Because attackers and defenders are equally lazy. We're looking for the shortest paths towards the most effective outcomes. So it's a good thing for us to keep in mind as we're gaming out that future of phishing. This has been fantastic. Jason, James, thank you so much for joining us and being part of this discussion here today. So with this, we'll be handing back to Stacia, who will be taking us into our next session, so please stay tuned.